Alright, Tim. So this is our simulated UPS S3, not the S2. Alright, so I'm going to power him up. He's got 64.7 volts DC. Here's my DC outputs, which I'm connecting over here to my UPS, or CBCT, I'm sorry. And ground always first. And then before I plug them in, I'm going to look at my front panel. So it powers right on up. And the output load drops down to 63.1. So let's check what my output's going to be. So 63.1 volts or 62.9, basically the same. Alright, see? Alright, now let's measure what the output's measuring. So I'm outputting 43.7 volts. Let's find out. So this is hooked up to my meter, and my meter's reading 43.64, 43.7. Alright, so now this cable is on a 3-prong. See how it splits off right here? So one goes up to my meter, and one's coming right back into my wet. And the reason the timing started is because as soon as I started this, it read the wet voltage. My timing started. So let's go ahead and reset this thing. Stopping it. Resetting the whole thing. I'm moving over my output enable to my pulse. So right here, this is my stop time. See how it's set to wet? I'm going to set it to dry. So this loop is going to duplicate a closed breaker. So basically my bushings are closed right here. When I disconnect it, it basically opened. So that should stop my timing. This start time set to wet. So it's going to look for the pulse output coming here. So as soon as I press pulse, activates these cables hooked up in here and they're wet, and it'll start the timing here, and this will stop it once I pull it and break the circuit. So let's go ahead and see if that happens. So we're going to start it. Oops, there we go. So my output enable is not on until I press this. So now I'm outputting 43.7 volts. See, the timing hasn't started because I'm waiting for a wet voltage, which I'm gonna pulse out. So there's my output enable. I'm not selecting no voltage. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set this to status. So it's doing a sample and hold. So as soon as I pulse it, it'll grab whatever voltage it sees. So let's go ahead and start it under pulse. Look at the timing. Timing should start as soon as I pulse it. So I'm hitting pulse now. There's the time. I'm gonna break the loop, the timing should stop. Boom, timing stop. And that's how you do it. Now let's assume we're gonna close the breaker. I'm gonna leave this disconnected. So I'm gonna reset this thing. Alright, and you can see the 43.64 volts that it pulsed out. Okay, reset this guy. Now this is this thing here is now open. So this is assuming the breaker's open, okay? So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna look for start time wet because we're monitoring the coils, right? This is at the pulse. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's start it again. Starting. So the timing here hasn't started because there's no wet voltage on the start. So let's go ahead and pulse it again while looking at the time. So at this point, I'm gonna activate the coil or operate the breaker, I would say. So I'm gonna start it. There, timing started. Now, and the breaker's closing at this time, but I'm kind of slower than the breaker is, so it's gonna. There, it closed after I shorted it. And that's basically how it operates. Any questions? Let me know. This concludes this lab test.